Hello and welcome to the first in a series that I'm tentatively calling How's It Work? And we're actually starting with Redstone. See, for many people, Redstone is very, very intimidating. You go online and you see tutorials of making these big world eaters, or you see people making computers in Minecraft, when in reality, the basics of Redstone are really quite simple. And so that's what this is. This is just the basics, starting from the very beginning and slowly getting more and more complicated until we begin to understand how some of those more complicated contraptions actually work. So we're going to start with these 6 things initially. We have a button, a torch, a lever, 2 pressure plates, the redstone ore, and a door. Now, the simple explanation of what redstone is it's just electricity. It's electricity that, in its simplest form, can only go about 16 blocks. In fact, you can kind of see this happening right here. Now, each of these blocks act in a very, very similar way. They are a source of this electricity, but they give the electricity in slightly different ways. So as an example, you have this button. Now the button does exactly what it appears to do. It gives a pulse of electricity. Now we aren't going to talk about how long exactly that pulse is quite yet, because we don't really need to know. This is just a very, very basic understanding of what's going on. But it gives a pulse, and then it turns off. The redstone dust does also give this energy, but it doesn't actually turn off unless you're able to turn it off using another redstone torch or another button or lever. The lever works kind of like a toggleable redstone torch. It could either be fully on or fully off. And then these pressure plates also give you the redstone signal. It's the same amount, 16 full blocks before it runs out. The difference is the stone pressure plate has to be stepped on by a mob in order for it to be triggered. So I can't put any amount of redstone torches on top of this to trigger it. Instead, if I want something like that, I would have to use the wood pressure plate. Now the wood pressure plate, I can of course step on it myself, but I could also use even just one item would function just fine. And you can even use this as a timer because items despawn after 5 minutes. So if you want a 5-minute timer, you can just put something on there and wait for it to despawn, and it will turn it right off. So the very simplest way of using these is going to be to open doors. And that's why I've used the iron door, because you can't actually open the iron door without using redstone in some way. And it just simply works that easily. But let's talk for a second about why exactly this works. See, I think you can kind of assume, judging by this, the pressure plate does power the block directly in front of it. In fact, if we use a bulb, we can see an example of that. It powers it directly in front, but it doesn't just power the one in front. So let's build a little contraption just to show you what it does. So here we have the first bit of the contraption. We have just bulbs surrounding this just to show you exactly what it will power. In fact, we're going to give it that all the way around. And you notice it powers the ones directly across, but not the ones diagonal. And the same can actually happen with the one directly above. In fact, let's change this out for an oak pressure plate. If we throw that on there, we can see it is now fully encased. We can see that this pressure plate can actually power one, two, three, four, five, 6 full blocks at the same exact time. Of course, there are very, very few situations in which you actually want to power that many at once, but maybe eventually you will. However, like I said, the best way of using this is really just for doors. That's going to be probably the first way that you start using redstone. Opening doors, opening gates, that sort of a thing. Now, as far as these redstone torches, you notice I have a little thing set up over here. Redstone torches are normally not toggleable unless you power them. And you can see we have a burnt out torch right here because it is powered by the torch directly below it. And that is how a torch works. It doesn't actually power anything below, as you can see there, but it will power something to the side or directly above. So we have this, or we could add something on top, and you'll notice the redstone dust directly above that is also powered. Now you'll notice that this is a circle now. If you just right click on it, it can toggle between being a circle or connecting to all 3 sides. And so let's see what that does. Now you'll notice the copper bulb is now lit, and then if I remove, add, it turns off. However, if I make it a circle, in other words, if I don't want it to be powered, I can just do something exactly like that. And now no matter how many times I connect this, it's not going to work. But once again, if we go back to the idea of our redstone torches, we can now make a very, very simple redstone tower to make our redstone signal go straight up, really as far up as you want. And there's many ways of doing this. This is one. This is going to be the more common one because it gives you more options. You can now have redstone lines going out from here. Here, basically every single level you can have a redstone line coming out of. Whereas this one, not necessarily. It's just a little bit harder. This one tends to be a little bit cleaner. Now the button does work in a similar way to these as well. The button does also power basically everything around it, and functionally the exact same way as these, except it goes right here. It goes on a wall. So you could press this to power the door, and because it is just a pulse of electricity, the door will now shut. So you could have the doors open either like this and have a stone pressure plate below it, or you could have them open like this. Of course, the problem with buttons is oftentimes by using buttons, you inadvertently power something that you don't want to power. So we can see an example of that right here. Let's say you have 2 doors that you want to open. Now if you put something in the middle, both of those doors now open. Or let's say you want just this door to open with pressure plates, whereas this one, you're using a button. You can't put the button here because they both open. You have to have them on either side. But now, why does this matter? How does this help? Well, once again, this is the simplest way of doing things. By having pressure plates or buttons that can open and close doors, you can also start making automatic lights. I have one wired up right here. You'll notice we use a redstone line that is connected to our pressure plate to power our torch right here. By doing that, it switches these from being powered to these. And whenever that happens, it powers on the light. So now, because this is a pulse, we can go into our house, have the light turn on, and then whenever we leave, it actually turns back off. It's just that simple. Now, I don't want these videos to be too long, so I think this is where we're going to end, but we're going to explain this just a little bit more succinctly. So basically, redstone is just power. Power either always on, or power that is toggleable. And you send that power via redstone, which can be connected, but can only go 16 blocks without the use of one of these. But this is what we're going to talk about next time. You can use this redstone to do simple things like opening doors, turning on lights, that sort of a thing. But you can also end up using this redstone for much, much, much more complicated contraptions. But I think for now, this is going to be where we end it. And next time, we're going to start on a little bit more complicated things, being redstone repeaters, powered rails, activator rails, mine carts, and dispensers. Now we're doing it this way because this is actually the order of oldest to newest in terms of releases. This was the very earliest form of redstone, and the next notable updates to redstone came not much longer in the form of these blocks right here. So next time, we're going to discuss these blocks and learn just very simply how to use them, while also beginning to apply the concepts that we learned in this as well. So thank you again for watching. If there's something that I missed, please do let me know and I'll try to send out an update. If you enjoyed it, go ahead and like the video. If you didn't, let me know what I can do to improve. But thank you again for watching. Bye.